Isabella and Sophia sit across from each other at a cozy corner table at a cafe in Seattle named Cafe Calculus for All. The cafe buzzes with soft chatter and the aroma of coffee. Isabella nervously stirs her drink, glancing occasionally at Sophia, who is calmly sipping her latte. Isabella sighs. Sophia, I really need your help. I'm terrified of telling my parents how I feel about the direction I want to go in my life. They have these huge expectations, and I'm just, well, nervous. Sophia smiling reassuringly. Remember, girlfriend, you must know the question before you can answer it. Isabella slightly smiling and asks Sophia with a sweet-sounding low voice. What do you mean? Well, think about it. You need to isolate what exactly you're afraid of. Remember Mr. Lovelace's lesson on solving absolute value equations. Isabella laughs. Oh gosh, yes. Approach math like you approach life or love, he would always say. Isabella's voice becomes more serious. I always thought he was just being dramatic. Sophia always happy to talk about mathematics. You can't solve a problem if you don't first recognize what the problem is. He taught us to first isolate, then separate this type of an equation into two parts in order to solve it. You need to do the same with your fear. Ask yourself, what exactly do I fear, and can I find two main components of that fear? Isabella pauses and begins to reflect. I guess, one part is disappointing them, and the other part is not knowing if I'm making the right decision for myself. Sophia. Exactly. Now let's tackle them one at a time. Sophia leans in and asks with a very direct voice, disappointing your parents. Why does that scare you? Isabella sighs. They've always had such high hopes for me. I don't want to let them down. I feel like if I don't follow their path, I'll be a failure in their eyes. Sophia grabs her coffee. Okay, let's think about that logically. What's the worst that could happen if you tell them the truth? Isabella nervously. They might get angry. Or worse, they might be disappointed. Sophia. But do you think their disappointment would be permanent? Or could it be something they eventually understand and accept? Isabella thinking. I guess it might be temporary. Sophia nodding. Now, about making the right decision for yourself. What does your heart say? Isabella. My heart says I need to follow my own path, even if it's different from what they expect. I want to be happy and true to myself. Sophia. You can hear Sophia's delight when she is talking about mathematics. So separately, let's talk about the problem logically and emotionally. If you can clearly define your fear and understand it, it often becomes less intimidating. It's like when Mr. Lovelace was solving an absolute value equation. When you first isolate the problem and separate it into two parts, you will find the solutions you seek. Lowering her voice. Dealing with your fear depends on how well you can redefine the meaning of disappointment, and secondly, knowing what is important to you. Mathematics is like life.
Welcome. Today we're going to solve a few absolute value equations. Recall the importance of isolating the function. Once a function is isolated, we can often determine the appropriate steps to find the solutions, if they exist. Also, we need to remember when we take the absolute value of a number, that number could be positive or negative or zero. The result will always be either a positive or a zero number. In other words, the result of taking the absolute value of any number will never be negative. So hey guys, let's get started with our first example. Here I'm looking at an example of solving an absolute value equation where I have 3 times the absolute value of negative 8x plus 8 equals 80. So remember, we're trying to get this function that we're looking at, which is the absolute value, isolated. So I need to get rid of the 3, and I need to also get rid of this 8. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of this 8. It's being added, so I want to subtract it. And I'm going to do that to both sides. When I do that, I get 3 times the absolute value of negative 8x equals 72. It looks like it's isolated, but not really. I still have this 3 to get rid of. It's being multiplied, so therefore I'm going to divide the left side by 3, and I'm going to divide the right side by 3. Now, when I do that, the result will be the absolute value of negative 8x is equal to 24. Now, notice that I have the absolute value is equal to a number, okay? And that is an important step right here, okay? Because we want to read this knowing that the absolute value of anything will result in a positive number or it will result in 0. And I'm looking at this and I'm pretty happy. Okay, so I put my little smiley face here because I know that I can solve this problem. There will be 1 or 2 solutions. Okay, now when I'm solving this absolute value, remember we're trying to isolate, then separate. So I want to take this one statement and combine it into 2 statements. Okay, so I have here's my or, and I'm going to have the first statement as negative 8x equals 24. So notice that only thing I really did is I just dropped the absolute value. So that's something you should remember. Just drop the absolute value for both of our statements. So I'm going to drop the absolute value on the right side. But this time, knowing that that number inside could be positive, could be negative, and that number inside could be 24, because the absolute value of 24 is 24, or the number inside could be negative 24 because the absolute value of negative 24 is 24. So I need to make this side negative. So again, once I know I can actually solve the problem because I isolated the function, which is the absolute value, it's equal to a positive number, so I know I'm going to have some solutions. Okay, so now let's solve the first equation on the left side. And I'm going to divide both sides by negative 8. When I do that, the result will be x equals negative 3. So there's my first solution. Okay. On the right side, another thing I want you to notice that when I'm solving the right side, it's going to look almost identical to what I just did on the left side. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 8, just like I did on the other equation. And when I do that, I'm going to get on the left side here, I get x equals 3. Okay, so here are my 2 solutions. I should check, but to save time, I will leave that on your own. But when you check your answer, make sure that you check your answer into the original statement. Okay, if you take a value and you plug it into your original statement, then that statement is true, so therefore you have a solution. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, so let me scroll down here a little bit. And here is our next problem. In example number 2, we have 2 minus 5 times the absolute value of 5 minus 5 equals negative 73. Okay, so I need to isolate the absolute value, so that 2 has to go away and then negative 5 has to go away. Okay, so let's isolate. I'm going to first subtract 2 from both sides. I really don't think, but you really can't distribute that negative 5. We want to kind of go in like the reverse order of operations. You can think of it that way. Okay, so here I have negative 5 times the absolute value of 5m minus 5, and that's going to equal negative 75. It's still not isolated because I want absolute value is equal to a number. Okay, and right now I have 5 times the absolute value equals to a number. So let's get rid of that negative 5 by dividing both sides by negative 5. Okay, now when I do that, I end up on the left side, the absolute value of 5m minus 5 is equal to positive 15. So I have an absolute value is equal to a positive number. So I'm happy. And I'm happy because I can actually find a solution. If that was equal to a negative number, I would have no solution, so there would be no need for me to separate that one statement into two statements. Now I want to find my two statements. Okay, so I'm going to have my OR, because I'm combining these two statements to represent the original statement. And all I have to do is drop the absolute value for both of my new statements. So I have 5m minus 5 equals 15, and 5m minus 5 equals 15. But this time, on the right side, that's going to be negative. Because remember, the absolute value of 15 will be 15, and the absolute value of negative 15 will equal 15. So I have my two statements, so now I'm going to solve the two new equations. And when I do that, I'm going to add 5 to this side. I'm going to add 5 to this side. When I do that, I get 5m equals 20. Now I'm going to divide this side by 5 and divide this side by 5. And that should result as m equals 4 on this side. Again, when I go to the right side, it should look identical to what I did on the left. Okay? The only difference is that the right side here has negative 15 on one side. So I'm going to, again, add 5 to both sides, just like I did with the first equation. And I get 5m equals negative 10. Okay? Now, to get rid of that 5, I'm, again, going to divide both sides by 5. And the result will be m equals negative. M equals, why is that not? I might be pushing my pen a little too hard. There we go. All right. Okay. All right. So here are my two solutions. I would take these two solutions in order to check and plug them back into my original statement. Okay. If I plug them into my original statement and that statement is true, then by definition, those two are solutions to my equation. Okay. All right, let's do one more and then we'll be done. Let's see. Let's look at 3 times the absolute value of 3 minus 5x minus 3 equals 18. It's a lot of 3's, but we'll see what happens. I'm solving an absolute value equation, but it's not isolated. So what I want to do is add 3 to both sides. Okay, when I do that, I get 3 times the absolute value of 3 minus 5x equals 21. Okay, let's keep going. It's not isolated. There's still something on the outside I have to get rid of. So let's go ahead and now divide this side by 3 and divide this side by 3. Whatever I do to the left, I must do to the right. Maintain equality. Okay, so here I have the absolute value of 3 minus 5x is equal to 7. It is isolated. Once the function is isolated, there may be a series of questions I need to ask myself about this function now, because I now have isolated and have an idea. I can try to determine if I even have a solution. So remember, the absolute value will result in a positive number or 0. I'm looking at a positive number, so I should get solutions. So therefore, as I'm looking at this, I'm happy. So I have a smiley face. Let's go. All right, now I'm going to take that statement and separate. So we isolate it. Now we separate. And once we separate, we're going to write our OR, and we're going to simply drop the absolute value, which is 3 minus 5x equals 7, and do the same thing for the other equation, 3 minus 5x equals 7, but this guy is going to be negative because remember, the quantity inside needs to either be 7 or negative 7. Absolute value of 7 is 7. Absolute value of negative 7 is 7. All right, so let's solve for x for both. And when we do that, we will get, we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. And we get negative 5x is equal to positive 4. And now I am going to divide both sides by negative 5. And when I do that, I get x equals negative 4/5. So this guy looks good. And now we're going to do the same thing on the right side, but on the right side we have our expression equal to negative 7. So I am going to subtract 3 from both sides again. Notice basically the same thing we did before. And I'm going to get negative 5x equals negative 10, looks like. All right, so now I'm going to get rid of the negative 5. When I do that, I divide both sides by negative 5, divide this side by negative 5, and I get x equals 2. So I get 2 solutions, okay? And to check, all I have to do is go back up and look at my original statement and plug in one of these values. So for example, let's just real quick, if we plug in 2 here for x, we will get 5 times 2, which is 10. 3 minus 10 will give me negative 7. The absolute value of negative 7 will be 7. 3 times 7 is going to be 21, and 21 minus 3 is 18. So we're happy. Okay? All right. That's all of the examples. Okay? And remember, when we're solving absolute value, we isolate and then we separate.
Isabella smiling. You're right. Isolate, isolate, isolate. When I look at it that way, it doesn't seem so scary. I just need to be honest with them and with myself. Sophia. Exactly. Hey girlfriend, here's another question for you. Aren't you excited to see how this all turns out for you? I am. Isabella is reaching across the table. They high-five each other. Thank you, Sophia. I don't know what I'd do without your mathematical wisdom. Sophia laughs. Hey, that's what friends are for. Now, let's finish our coffee and order a couple of bagels. They both smile, take a sip of their drinks, and check their phones, leaving the cafe feeling more confident and ready to solve their next challenge. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. See you in the next video. Be good.